regulatory approval of India's first malaria drug specifically designed for newborns and infants, a vital step towards safeguarding our most vulnerable population. To help us understand the clinical, regulatory, and public health implications of this milestone, we are honored to have with us Dr. Amitav Banerjee, a distinguished public health expert. Dr. Banerjee is the Emeritus Professor and Head of the Department of Community Medicine at Dr. D.Y. Patil Medical College, Pune. He served in the Indian Armed Forces for over 2 decades, from 1978 to 2005, before dedicating himself fully to academia and public health. With over 100 published research papers and numerous funded projects to his credit, Dr. Banerjee is a well respected voice in national and international public health forums. His vast experience in epidemiology, preventive medicine, and healthcare systems makes him the perfect guide for today's important discussion. Let's warmly welcome Dr. Amitav Banerjee as he takes us through what doctors must know about this regulatory milestone in pediatric malaria. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Sitil. And it's always a pleasure to come on this DocPlexus platform. And a few days back, when DocPlexus approached me for this topic, I was a bit hesitant because this deals with a regulatory milestone in pediatric malaria treatment. That is very young children, I mean, infants less than 5 kg, 2 kgs, 3 kgs, uh, who have not been tolerating these drugs very well, the conventional anti-malarial drugs, because of their not well developed liver function. They could not metabolize it. They were having toxicity. And these recent trials have been completed in 8 African countries, and in about 8 African countries, and very, very well tolerated. A combination of artemether and lumefantrine, baby doses. And this is definitely for those. Why I was reluctant was कि I had not the last pediatric malaria cases I had seen was long back, more than almost 25 years back, when I was posted in a tribal area of India, very heavily invested hyperendemic tribal area. There we used to see pediatric cases, and then after that I had not seen, and I was under the impression that probably pediatricians may have seen it. Then I talked to few very senior pediatricians in Pune, and they said that they are also not seeing very high any cases of pediatric malaria in young children, because these have confined. This problem of pediatric malaria is very much localized in the African region. So I will just try to give the context of the malaria picture, and in this context, what is the implications of this development of pediatric artemether lumefantrine combination, which has been found very well tolerated in very young children, low birth weight children. So I will just, this will be the scope of the session. What is the public health? Because malaria, I have had a lot of experience of malaria. As I said, I was in a tribal area, heavily infected with malaria, heavy malaria transmission throughout the season. And there are different ecological patterns, there are different epidemiological patterns of malaria. And in one region of the world, malaria may behave differently, and the priorities may be different than from other region in the world. So malaria, the public health burden, I will just give an overview, because in this context we can consider what are the implications of this. And this regulatory approval has come just a week ago, not more than a week back. So it's a very recent year, and it has been approved, and we'll see how it may unfold. So then I will give some overview of what you mean by stable malaria and unstable malaria, epidemiological overview. Because in stable malaria, where the malaria is stable, the pediatric malaria is a bigger problem. Where the malaria is unstable, the pediatric problem may not be a bigger problem. I'll just try to explain it as we go along. Then malaria in children, what are the epidemiological implications? Why uh, addressing the malaria infestation in children is important. Then drug treatment challenges children. As I had just mentioned that they had young children with low weight, low body weight. They have a problem of metabolizing these anti-malarial drugs. So they are having toxicity. So this new development in the trials, phase 2 by 3 trials. Phase 2 by 3 trials have been completed by Novartis and 8 African countries, and the results are very encouraging, that it's very well tolerated. So therefore, it's a breakthrough in treatment of these very young children who used to succumb to malaria. Implications I will discuss. What is the implications of this artemether lumefantrine or Artem baby? This is the trade name in pediatric malaria. So this is the malaria problem, that malaria as on today is confined to tropical and subtropical regions, and African regions. They 95% of malaria cases as well as deaths occur in the African continent. So that's why in the Indian continent we are not seeing many cases. And that too, if the malaria is not hyperendemic, we will not see pediatric malaria, as I will explain. Then Sub-Sahara Africa region accounts for the majority of global malaria cases and deaths. Then some cases you will find in parts of Oceania, Papua New Guinea, and some parts of Latin America and Southeast Asia. And in our country, in India, it is mostly, as on today, it is uh, more endemic or hyper endemic in tribal areas, the northeast, the central tribal regions, and some parts of Orissa, Bihar, hill parts, and tribals. So these are some of the figures. In 2023, there were estimated 249 million cases and about 6 lakh deaths in 83 countries. The WHO region carries a disproportionately high share. African region global malaria. This is from the figure is from the WHO. In 2023, the WHO Africa region was home to 94% of malaria cases, 246 million, and 95%, almost 5.69 lakh deaths, malaria deaths. So children under 5 account for about 76% of all malaria deaths in the region. This is very important, and you will appreciate. I mean, this is uh, children where the malaria has having intense transmission. And paradoxically, where the intense transmission is going on, that is known as stable malaria. I'll just try to explain. It's a paradoxical. So these are the distribution. This is maybe a little older map, but these maroon is the high transmission, the malaria endemicity, and not high transmission. Because India is also showing maroon, but all parts of India are not having transmission as on today. To make it maroon, uh, it is the tribal northeast areas, whole of northeast, parts of Orissa, Bihar, and tribal regions in central India. So I was trying to explain what is stable malaria and what is unstable malaria. Where, and it is a bit paradoxical, like in India, the tribal belts, I have myself worked there in a hyper endemic malaria regions. And what happens in that, the adults do not suffer much from malaria. This is paradoxical. You may just understand this. The malaria transmission is intense. So what happens? The children, they face the brunt of the malaria, and they have a very high infant mortality rate. And most of this infant mortality due to malaria goes undiagnosed as malaria. So this is the vulnerable infants, they succumb to malaria because the typical symptoms of malaria may not be there, rigors and chills. So before the diagnosis is there, and as I said, most of the drugs were not, they die. The infant mortality is high, and those who survive, they develop, they are little resistant. I mean, some sort of selection pressure. So those who go into adulthood and staying in that same place only, they are staying in the same place, they are getting repeated infections where they do not suffer from it. And they grow up as adults and they withstand malaria without getting the disease. This is not a very strong immunity. Malaria has got a very weak sort of premunity. They call it premunity. I mean, it's not very long lasting, but there is some. Yeah. So it appears that there is no malaria in that region. But the real fact is, malaria is running through the children, infants, and killing them. And adults have survived and they have got some premunity, not exactly immunity, but and therefore the outbreaks are not visible because and that's why it is called as stable malaria. Some sort of equilibrium is reached, high infant mortality, maybe high spleen rate in children. That those survivors, when they are adults, there are no outbreaks among them because there's some sort of a weak herd immunity, one can say. And this is called stable malaria. And these are found in like African countries, which are hyper endemic. And in India, you will find this in the tribal areas. And here is the uh, context where this pediatric combination is most needed. Diagnostic facilities are more needed in children. As I said, most of this high infant mortality are due to undiagnosed malaria. You have to diagnose it early. You have recently, if you 6, 7 months back, there was a suspicion of disease X outbreak in Congo or some African countries. Ultimately, it was found to be malaria, which were going undiagnosed, and there was a high mortality. And these are the neglected regions for malaria. And here you require the intense transmission is going on, and children they maintain the reservoir of the parasite because they are gametocytes content are high there in children. So if you don't treat the children, the malaria foci will remain. So this, if it is properly used, this drug combination, artemether lumefantrine, and identifying the children, you will bring down the infant mortality rate and you will eliminate the reservoir of infection also. So transmission, now that is stable malaria. And unstable malaria, paradoxically, there may be lot of either way. In a area where the malaria has reached an equilibrium, suddenly there are large number of influx of non-immune, non-native people. This we used to face in the armed forces because troops used to be deployed in tribal areas, in forest areas, and they have no immunity, but the natives have immunity. So once there is a mixing or they go in that environment, there are large outbreaks among the newly inducted people, migrants or troops or laborers, some construction work going on. So in there may be outbreaks among adults. So this is situation is called unstable malaria. Also, the other way in which a stable malaria may convert into unstable malaria is that used in a region which is hyperendemic, you try to launch anti-malaria activities. So you will interrupt the transmission, but you may not completely eliminate it. So many people will go into adulthood without being exposed to it, and once the your intervention measures weakens or is not complete, any the large number of troops, the large number of the natives also may get infected with malaria and suffer from malaria, and there may be outbreaks. So it will be uh, it's a very complex situation. Stable malaria is actually it is something like peace is there, but at the cost of high infant mortality. So stable malaria is not a very desirable thing. I mean, it appears that yes, it has reached stability, but you are paying a high cost of lives, infant lives, because the infants bear the brunt of it, and adults who survive they develop immunity. Unstable malaria is either there are influx of people and there is a mixing of immune and non-immune. So large number of cases occur in adults. So the outbreak appears very obvious. In stable malaria, it is the iceberg phenomena. Children are suffering and large number of child deaths and high infant mortality. In most of our tribal areas, it maybe the malaria is causing infant deaths which are going unrecognized. So this is the situation. Then drug treatment, as I said, multiple medicines were used to prevent treat. So these are depends on the type of malaria. What we are mainly concerned, it is, as you must be knowing, that there are the four different plasmodiums: Vivax, falciparum, Malaria oval. So Malaria oval are not very common in our country, but they may not be of much. They may sometimes persist for long, but the killer is the falciparum. Vivax is also quite prevalent, and Vivax and falciparum are too common. And Vivax is easy to treat. In fact, can be treated in many places by chloroquine and primaquine for elimination of gametocytes and the hepatocyte phase. But the falciparum is the killer one. So falciparum we require very quick treatment sometimes because it can rapidly deteriorate patient's conditions, go into cerebral malaria, go into renal failure, black water fever. And the drug resistance problem started with falciparum and still persists. And so these are, as on today, for falciparum, we usually focus on falciparum because if we treat falciparum, Vivax also will get treated most or less. And Plasmodium vivax also requires, definitely they require treatment, but the killer is falciparum. So most common drugs today is the artemisinin-based combination therapy, since when we talk of Plasmodium falciparum. Chloroquine is recommended for treatment infections with Plasmodium vivax parasite only in places where it is still sensitive in to this medicine. Even in some pockets, the Plasmodium vivax is also developing some resistance. And primaquine is added to eliminate the carrier state in falciparum and in the liver stage in vivax and oval. And this artemisinin, the artemether, which is the seat anchor of treatment as on today, has got a very interesting history. It is a 2000 years old, it is derived from a 2000 years old herbal medicine, Chinese herbal medicine. Artemisinin, it has been, the active ingredient has been derived from a 2000-year-old herbal medicine. And the scientist who worked on it, name is UU2. Quite a difficult or a name, but it is easy. YOU, and TU. UU2. She identified that it has got anti-malarial, this ancient herb, 2000-year-old traditional medicine, has got anti-malaria properties, and then she worked on it, refined it further, and it is today it is the number one drug for falciparum medicine, malaria. And for this, she got the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology in the year 2015. So this is one of the things to note, that there may be, we also have got so many Ayurveda and botanical diversity. Probably if more research is done, like Chinese have done it, so I think there is a food for thought. So as I had already given some overview, these were the challenges, and there is a study also. I could get hold of a study. What were the challenges in treating, which was the conventional treatment for children before this new combination has been undergone the trial. The usual treatment in children was the combination of sulfadoxine pyrimethamine and amidaquine as the first line anti-malaria drug in 5 centers, and they did a study in 5 centers, and they found that 33% of the children who are low weight, less than 6 months or less than 5 kg, and took less than the prescribed doses. So either the toxicity was high because the liver function and all are not well developed in very young children. So these new recommendation are for the young children, very young children. where the conventional drug amiodarone and sulfadoxine was not well tolerated, and 47 and 83% respectively for amiodarone and sulfadoxine pyrimethamine received a dose higher than the theoretical dose. So high dose and it can cause adverse events. So either they were not able to calibrate the proper dose for treating young children. So this was the earlier year, and this is in the so in this context, this new development, lumefantrine, artemether lumefantrine combination. Artemether I have already mentioned. It is from a derived from a herbal, ancient herbal. It has been refined and developed into the latest anti-malaria. And lumefantrine is also an anti-malaria agent used in combination with artemether for the treatment of uncomplicated malaria caused by Plasmodium falciparum for improved efficacy. So lumefantrine is used with artemether, and the what we are topic today is that the pediatric formulation. So artemether we have already mentioned, it's an anti-malaria agent. It is again this particularly the combination of artemether and lumefantrine is very efficacious against the plasmodium. So this is the news a week ago. Novartis received approval malaria for newborns and infants, and the trade name is Coartem. Artemether lumefantrine baby becomes the first anti-malaria treatment approved for newborn babies and young infants. Rapid approval in 8 African countries expected under a special global scheme run by Swiss Agency for Therapeutic Products, Swiss Medic. So the approval has been obtained by Swiss Medic in Switzerland, and it is expected that this rapid approval may also come in this 8 hyper-endemic African countries. As I said, the pediatric malaria is a problem in these countries, and they are the reservoir of transmission, the infants. They carry the parasites, and if they go untreated, the malaria foci remains. Novartis plans to introduce infant-friendly on not-for-profit basis to increase access in areas where malaria is endemic. And if see, this is the wherever there is malaria, there is poverty, there is lack of access, there is lack of even basic health services, there may be lack of access of diagnostic services. So in isolation, this drug may not make an impact, because as I said, most of the deaths are infant mortality rate, which the cause of death goes undiagnosed, and most may be malaria. So we require to beef up the diagnostic and health services also in these regions, together with this new combination of pediatric malaria formulation, artemether lumefantrine baby. So for more than 3 decades, we have stayed the course to fight against malaria, relentless to deliver scientific breakthrough where they are needed most. This is the Narsimhan, CEO of Novartis statement. Together with the partners, they are proud to have developed the first clinically is 3 kgs, 5 kgs, ensuring even the smallest and most vulnerable can finally receive the care they deserve. So probably artemether, maybe from a herbal, maybe safe for children. I mean, these were the presumptions, but the trials, phase 2, it sees the safety, and 3 sees the efficacy of actual practice. So they have actually found favorable results, and once they are in use, we may again come to know better about them. And now, what are the implications? We have already given some points. So, just to sum up, until now, there have been no approved malaria treatments for infants. It was trial and error. As we saw, they have done a study, they found sometimes they are overdosing, sometimes they are underdosing. I mean, and their treatment gap was there. They have instead been treated with formulation intent for older children, which increase the risk of overdose and toxicity. Malaria vaccines are also not approved for the younger babies. And malaria vaccines also you have to, I mean, they are not very, because even the natural infection with malaria is not, it's giving a kacha immunity, pre-immunity. So vaccines also, number of doses repeated. So the drug is a good development. And these are, if you are talking of the pediatric patients and this drug, the how many beneficiaries will be there? 30 million babies are born in areas of malaria in Africa every year. And with large survey in West Africa reporting infection ranging from 3.4 to 18.4 in infants younger than 6 months old. This is the target population for this drug. Babies younger than 6 months old were not having any well tested anti-malarial drug till now. So this is the gap which has been filled. However, current data on malaria in young babies is extremely limited as they are rarely included in clinical trials and anti-malarial agent. So anyway, they have carried it out this time. The available malaria treatment have only been properly aged at older children. This matter because neonates and young have immature liver function and metabolic some medicines differently. So the dose for older children may not be appropriate for smaller babies. This was the situation before this. And this new dose strength designed for young infants was developed by Novartis in collaboration and sponsored with number of international agencies, but Swiss Med mostly. The treatment is the tablet. Actually, a tablet is dissolvable, including in breast milk, so it is easier to give to children. Sweet cherry flavor, making it can be given orally. And generic name is artemether lumefantrine. It contains 20 milligram artemether and 120 milligram. It may be smaller dose, may be required for below 6 months. This is, I think, 6 months, and that has to be calibrated 120 milligram. And twice, about 6 tablets for young children of 6 months, and maybe lesser for children below than 6 months. Course of 6 tablets. For so this is the and this is the study name was Kalina study. SwissMed approved is based on phase 2/3 Kalina studies, which investigated a new ratio dose of coartem, artemether, lumefantrine for metabolic in under 5 kilograms. Infants weighing less than 5. So this is actually new formula. Drugs are known, but it's a new form and tested in young children. And dosage they have adjusted. It is indicated for treatment of infants and neonates weighing between 2 kg and less than 5. Acute uncomplicated infection due to falciparum, mixed infection. Coartem is known by the brand name Riamet in Switzerland and some other countries. And just since we are Indian doctors, what is the relevance in Indian context? As I said, we don't get any cases of pediatric malaria here. Most Indian towns and cities have very few cases of malaria in pediatric patients. I talked to a very senior pediatrician yesterday. Hyperendemic, as I said, are in the tribal regions. So where the dynamics may be similar to the African countries. I have said I was there in and there sometimes children may carry. I have seen myself a 3-year-old child there. I have published it also. I have given the reference. They are moving around with very high falciparum parasitemia, almost asymptomatic. And when we tested her blood, full of falciparum, because the child has grown old and she has survived, and other children have died. So similarly, adults go. Whereas all troops, even with very less parasitemia, they succumbed. So there is a difference between natives and uh, people who are not being exposed. So all tribal areas may be having these very young children. I mean, the more the intense transmission, like in the African countries, more the younger infants are dying of malaria, or very early in the infancy. So I think we have to do research there to see whether the same thing is happening in all tribal areas. And this caring for those tribal areas and trying to eliminate and the children become the foci of infection, reservoir of infection, because that is the way to malaria actually if you want to eradicate. Otherwise that will be smoldering. So this is, I think this has a public health, besides a clinical treatment, it has a public health relevance also. And I don't know exactly whether or regulator also may give it sanction. for at least as a trial use in tribal areas. So where it is needed. Another way is that travel history. We may need to study the pediatric in tribal areas. We require good research. That is a scope for research I have identified as a public health specialist and having some first-hand experience in tribal malaria, having stayed there and seeing the dynamics among the local tribals, how malaria is behaving, and with our own troops. They used to succumb and die of malaria, and this particularly adults of tribes, they were not, children may have been dying with high infant mortality and going undiagnosed. So there we require this pediatric combination. And other way with a occasional clinician, occasional pediatrician, even in a big town, in a big city in India. Suppose he gets a very young patient with a fever and all, always ask the travel history. You don't know nowadays. Lot of travel, global travel has become. Some child may be gone to Africa, coming from there, or visited some tribal area, safari and all very common now, adventure tourism. So that has to be kept in mind. And for that, I think at least some emergency doses may be available. I think it has to be worked out with the regulator in India. At least some restricted in such emergencies where a child has come and this if the drug is available and we'll see it's only a week it has been got the regulation and how it experienced in the African countries. So this is the, I think these are the two ways in which this drug can be in the Indian context. One for research in tribal area among the young infants, and to have an emergency and one odd case comes and a pediatrician should not miss this diagnosis which can save the life. And it has happened in developed countries some decades back in some Europe or England. People, some traveler has gone from an endemic malaria country and they missed a malaria diagnosis and they lost the patient. So that high index, particularly with this quick global travel, one has to keep that in mind. So these are some of the references. And these are some, most of the references are from the recent announcements. And of course, the one study I have cited where they had done the earlier anti-malarial drugs in children where they found underdosing or overdosing. And the last reference I have done, as I said, I have seen a young child moving around with very high parasitemia, hardly any symptoms. And in fact, I had preserved the slide for quite some time and lost it now. I don't know. So had I would have projected it. So anyway, thank you. I think that's all. I can take a few questions, I think.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee, for that wonderful presentation. We have a few questions from the audience, so let us go through them one by one. So, my first question to you is, uh, just a minute. Yes, so my first question to you is, will this be a boon to rural general practitioners or, like you said, the tribal areas, practitioners at the tribal areas for optimizing malaria management in infants and given the infrastructure challenges? So, will this be a boon or a bane?
Uh, it will be in isolation, drug in isolation may not make much of an impact because first we have to gather the intelligence, health intelligence, the malaria foci, and we should have good diagnostic services. And now I think some rapid kits are available for infants also. So first, all fever cases in infants or everyone in children should be tested for malaria, and it would definitely, this combination will be a boon because up till now they may be having some drugs which may be causing adverse effects which may lead to the death of the child also. So either the malaria may be killing or the improper combination. So if this drug is found so safe, definitely it's a boon and it will bring down the infant mortality rate due to malaria. But for that, you should have the tribal area, you should have the health infrastructure, the medical officer, or and the lab facilities. So that is important.
Thank you for answering that. My next question to you is what are the key points doctors should communicate to parents regarding the use and safety of this new pediatric anti-malarial drug?
I
Anything that you would like to
This
highlight?
this new drug, as on today, I think it should not be easily available over the counter. It should only be available in those areas, as you said. First, you map the tribal areas where there is pediatric malaria, and other areas, it should only be available in hospitals under the pediatrician's prescription, and only because I talked to a senior pediatrician. He has not seen a case of malaria in children for the past 5 years. So this malaria is not intense transmission in the towns and cities. Is not happening. Adult malaria may be there. As I said, intense wherever there is intense transmission, the pediatric malaria is a problem. So it should not be easily available. So parents need not know about it, because otherwise they will self-medicate.
Thank you for letting us know that. My next question to you is how should doctors contribute to surveillance efforts or report unusual malaria patterns in pediatric patients?
All cases, it should be the protocol, private practitioners, all doctors. Any fever case, first you think malaria. The blood's peripheral smear should be taken. And particularly, it is more important in children, because in children, the classical signs of malaria may be missing, the chills and rigor and sweating. So, that if that is there, you will not miss any cases. So, whatever be, even if you find, I have seen people come with sore throat, respiratory infection, and you don't do a you give and you do a blood smear, you find malaria also. So malaria may coexist in endemic areas with other infections. Also malaria may coexist. So you have to give the guidelines that all cases of fever should have a malaria in our country.
Thank you for answering that. And with that, we have reached the end of this webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee, for that enlightening and thought provoking session. Your expert insights into India's evolving malaria treatment landscape, especially the recent regulatory advancement for pediatric care, have certainly provided much needed clarity for our medical community. As doctors, staying updated on such developments empowers us to make informed clinical decisions and improve patient outcomes, especially in a country where malaria remains a significant public health challenge. To our audience, thank you for your participation and thoughtful questions. We hope today's session has added a meaningful value to your clinical practice. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and continue making a difference. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Situl. Thank you.
So